Everyone! I thought for New Year's I would try and make it a tradition to make a boozy dessert. Now, the first thing I think of when someone says boozy dessert is rum cake. That's probably at least in part because Mike has a full-on rum collection downstairs, so if there's one thing I know we have enough of in the house at any given moment, it's rum. Now, this will be a very boozy cake, so obviously this recipe is not appropriate for kids. There's enough rum in the cake to keep that the alcohol will not bake off. So keep that in mind if you're entertaining the underage crowd. There are literally hundreds, if not thousands, of versions of the classic rum cake on the internet, but the one that I decided to follow this year is from Booze Cakes, which is a fabulous little book full of wonderful looking recipes that I am dying to try. So come bake with me. For our dry ingredients, we're going to do flour, more flour, and the final bit of flour, baking powder, baking soda, and salt. I know I've railed against doing this before because why not just mix it in the mixer? But in this case, since we're going to add in the dry ingredients in batches, this makes more sense. So this is the only time I don't get annoyed about having to use the extra bowl. Alright, that's all mixed up. And now for our wet ingredients, which I am going to do in this measuring cup, both because that makes it easy, and then I'll be able to easily pour it into the mixer. So we need milk, rum. This is a very boozy cake. This is not for kids, as I said in the intro. And vanilla. Give that a little mix. And we're ready for the next part. Alright, we start off just like a normal cake with creaming our butter and our sugar. Well creamed, now we add in our eggs. Now we're going to add in our dry ingredients and our wet ingredients in batches. So we're starting with, say, a third or so of the dry ingredients. Maybe start off a little slower than I did and don't spritz flour all over the place. Or, you know, go for it. You do you. Normally I would scrape in between each addition, but my paddle has a scraper, and I gotta say, I love this thing, because now I never have to scrape, so I highly recommend. Alright, now we put it in the pan. I am using my bundt cake pan. I looked it up last time. This is the same bundt cake pan I used for the monkey bread in my Disney video. I'll link that up in the cards if I can figure out how. Don't make the monkey bread. But this bundt cake pan is I had to look it up because somebody asked me. And it's a Jubilee pan. So it gets all these really cool, like, diamondy patterns on the side. Great for soaking up rum glaze. Come on, get all the batter in. Alright. Set that there for a minute. I did spray this very heavily with Pam so that hopefully, fingers crossed, we can get it out of the pan later. Alright. Into the oven it goes. This is going into a 350-degree oven for 1 hour. Alright, our cake is done, so now we need to depan it. So Fingers crossed, everyone, that this comes out okay. It's also pretty fluffy. Yep, it's not coming out. Well, that didn't work at all. All right. I did spray the pan a lot. So I'm hoping if I can just loosen these first little bits, that'll help. This isn't the kind of pan that you can run the knife all the way down. So we're gonna try that again. There it goes. Oh, that didn't turn out too bad. All right, now we let it cool. For our glaze, we need butter, and we're going to melt it. And once it's melted, we'll add in the sugar and the water. Melt. All right, we're melted. That was easy. We're gonna put in 1 cup of sugar and a little bit of water to help it melt. And we're going to bring this to a boil, and then we're going to cook it for 5 minutes. That's our 5 minutes. Turn off the turn off the oven. Turn off the stove, and then we're going to add in our rum and stir that in, being careful. To make it easier to pour over the cake, I am going to transfer this into something with a pour spout. And now we take this to the cake. I'm just going to level this so that it sits flush with the plate. Well, it's not the most level thing I've ever done, but flip it over and no one will know. All right, now for the glaze. So now we just pour all of this over the top and the sides of the cake and let it absorb completely. The nice thing about these Jubilee pans is they create these little wells, and you can fill them up with little rum sauce, and it'll help with your absorption because it'll sit there for a minute. You want to go slow so that it's fully absorbed. All right, almost all of our glaze has soaked in, so now I'm going to use my wand, my powdered sugar wand, to dust with powdered sugar, and now we're ready to serve.
Here are my final thoughts. This recipe came together very quickly and smelled amazing when it was baking. You absolutely can leave the rum out of the glaze if you want to make it less boozy. Much to my surprise, even after pouring the glaze over the cake and letting it be absorbed, the edges of the cake were still firm, almost to the point of being crispy, which was actually really nice. Along those same lines, the powdered sugar was still visible on the cake even the next day, which was also nice. Please note, the rum you use will absolutely impact its flavor and is very noticeable, so be sure and use a rum that you actually like. A few important metrics. Is this cake worth making at home, with 1 being Oreos, totally not worth making, and 5 being chocolate chip cookies, totally worth making? This recipe is a 5. If you like rum cake, this recipe is great, and making it at home allows you to control the amount of booze in the cake and its flavor, because, as I said earlier, you can use any rum you like, not whatever the bakery could get cheaply. Can or should this recipe be made in advance, with 1 being souffle? Absolutely not. And 5 being fruitcake will literally keep forever? This recipe is a 4. I would actually recommend making this at least a day ahead of serving. This allows the cake to fully absorb the glaze and allows the flavor to more fully develop. How hard was this recipe, with 1 being instant pudding and 5 being the multi-layer death by chocolate cake? This recipe is a 2. Really, this recipe is incredibly easy to put together, and while rum cake is traditionally made in a bundt pan, even this is not required. If you don't have one, you can easily make this in a traditional cake pan or a loaf pan. Just watch your baking temperatures and times. If you've made it this far, thanks so much for watching. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing. I upload a new video every Friday. And hit that like button if you liked it. If you have a recipe you'd like to see me try, please put it in the comments, and I'll see you next week.